You need a body shop? You need engine repair? Auto Excellence, Collision Specialists, 631-261-6420. That's 631-261-6420. Auto Excellence. Jimmy, I gotta take a dump.
What?
No, I mean I need a dumpster.
Well, for all those needs, you need to call Big V Dumpster Rental, Long Island, New York, 631-900-DUMP.
Heroes never sacrifice. We never leave love alone. Is hate really worth the price? Look at
Watching Fox, I stopped watching everything. And you know what I started watching?
This Is Us?
Reruns of Star Trek, man. Everybody was happy in there. It was multiracial, man.
back on the interstate. So open up your eyes way before it gets too late. Now one man, there's no way you can hit the street lights running. Don't give a damn. A simple explanation that you'll never find.
Hey there, peeps. How we doing this evening? We have our second episode of In the Dungeon going on. We have the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan in the house, AA the Reinforcer, Mr. Andrew Anderson, and Mr. Craig Masse. How we doing this evening, gents?
Good,
Excellent.
fellas. How we doing?
Excellent.
Well, you people are probably wondering who Craig Masse is. I'm going to tell you who Craig Masse is. Craig Masse from Lockport, Louisiana, is one of pro wrestling's foremost collectors and self-proclaimed world's biggest mark. And he has
Thank you. That's nice of you, Drew. Thank you.
And you have the T-shirt to prove it. Remember?
I do have that. Manny Fernandez gave me that. I do have that.
The
Oh,
world's
he
biggest
called
one.
himself-
That's impressive all on its own. That
I don't know
carries
if that's
serious
good or
clout.
bad, though.
Hey,
No, it's not bad.
Andrew, you forgot the main thing. Craig owns
What's that?
construction around the world, whether it be Arabia or Jakarta or Texas. He's
New York.
New York, and he's expanding in Asia now. So hopefully you and I can take him to Singapore.
Yes, that
Yeah.
would be nice. It'd be nice
Yeah.
to go see Mark Lewin there.
Yeah.
Dinner with Lewin. We'll have dinner with Mark Lewin and the Princess.
That
Yeah.
would be awesome. I'm working towards that.
Well, we
Cool.
want to go
A
see.
little more time.
Got to bring the robe so I can bring the robe back to Mark and put it on him.
Hey,
That would-
Craig, can I ask you a question to get into this?
yes,
What-
go ahead.
When did you first acquire your first memorabilia piece, and what was it?
Ooh, I have to think back. I think my first piece was probably 23 years ago.
Wow.
Which
Did you know
was it?
what it was?
And it was, probably 22, 23 years now. And that was the Alabama heavyweight champion belt. And I think that was back from like 80 to 85, that belt was held.
Wow. And how many belts do you have in total?
Ooh, I probably have, as you can see, I got a few back here. I would say I probably have maybe around 22 to 25.
They're all originals, and a lot of them have been certified by the guys like Dave Milliken and
Yes. Almost everything I have is all
And the-
ring worn. I have maybe one replica belt that I actually got from a Dave Milliken.
and Reggie Parker made a lot of the belts too.
And
Yeah, those
that
are-
he made for me. But pretty much all my collection is all ring worn authentic.
Wow.
I have a question for you, Craig. Which is your most which is your favorite piece of memorabilia you have and why?
Oh, I have, I would probably have to say, probably the North American heavyweight belt. And older
Wow.
version, probably more than the newer, just from, my memories of, back
Where did that come from? I mean, what territory was the North American belt? Was that Mid-South?
That was
Wow.
Mid-South. And that particular belt was held by Buddy Colt back in Florida as well. They used it there. And then Bill Watts, from DiBiase to Ernie Ladd and Orndorff and Junkyard Dog. And so it's Dusty held it. I think Stan Hansen did as well. So it has a lot of history, and it has a lot of coverage for me from back in the magazine to back then.
Every one of those guys you mentioned, I worked with. Ernie Ladd. Ernie Ladd was one of the, I always bring this up. People don't realize sometimes they get lost in history. Ernie Ladd was a fabulous performer. When I was a kid, I used to go to the American Football League games with my brother. And I saw Ernie play when I think he played for the LA Chargers at the time. You know what Ernie Ladd brought to football? He was the first guy on the field when they had practice fields, before the game, that didn't wear a helmet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
And Ernie.
I didn't know that.
What?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Another thing is, Ernie cut a guy during the match during a football game with a blade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Ernie was one of the big stars in the AFL. And Ernie didn't get his due, I think, as a professional wrestler. I mean, people know the name. But Ernie at the time, and I heard Morocco say this, so it isn't just off the top of my head. Ernie was working across the country, almost like Andre. He forced Vince Sr. into paying him, Billy Graham, and Ivan Koloff if they weren't on the main event money. And Ernie was very nice to me when I was a young boy. I had a riot with Ernie. My position was to get the guy ready for Bruno, right? And I was supposed to go like 5 minutes with Ernie in Long Island at Nassau Coliseum. And I had a match with Ernie where he was taking all these crazy bumps for me and he gave me like 85% of the match until he reached in and got the thumb, the original Asiatic spike, and hit me in the throat. And then when I went down, he put his feet on the ropes. And after that, he came back and kicked me. He had a full-blown riot. Ernie was the first black booker in the history of pro wrestling.
Wow.
Ernie was a very, very smart guy. And
he was one of my favorites, for
Now,
sure.
where was Ernie Booker at? Ernie booked in the Mid-South, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
he booked Watts. Yeah.
Yep, for Bill Watts, yeah. He was
Yeah.
one of the most. I was a kid and I was front row at Madison Square Garden at the wrestling matches. My dad took me to them. It was the first thing I saw. Ernie Ladd stepped over that top rope. He was one of the few guys to step over the top rope next to Andre. And I think he used to do that to say he was a giant, just like Stud used to do. But when he stepped over the guardrail and I was in the front row, the sheer size of this man, when you're a 12-year-old kid and this big, gigantic man steps over the guardrail, and they didn't always go over the guardrail back then. It wasn't like now where they'll fight into the audience. And he stepped 1 foot right over that guardrail and he came right at us. And I remember the police were there and I just sat there and I was shit scared. That man made me believe it was real.
Before Ernie's knees went on him, he was a legitimate 6'10".
So, yeah. I was going to say that Ernie Ladd was a legit, whatever his height was, it was a legit 6'9", 6'10". It wasn't, wasn't a fictitious height number.
And he was the elder Bush's dear friend. the original George Bush. He was
Right.
there. Yeah. Ernie was a super nice guy, super smart, drew a lot of money. Great football player. In my head, he should be in the NFL Hall of Fame, but most of the years he played in the AFL. And they have a kind of a thing where they don't put many of those AFL players in where they should.
Wow. So Craig, getting back to the collecting business and how you got into it, name some of the people who you've met and purchased items from actually from the actual wrestlers themselves. Craig?
All right.
Hello?
We're having some technical difficulties, but if you can hear me, wasn't the number one most important piece of memorabilia the golden spike? Ah,
No, leave that out. Don't mention that. We're not talking about spikes. That's got to be edited out of this. We're not, no heat, not right now. Not right now. No.
no.
Couldn't go off too.
Kevin ran away.
Kevin ran away. Well, we put
Yeah,
me and Craig.
Hey, I
You're
had
back?
to give the dog. I had to fill the dog bowl
Yeah.
up with water.
The dogs fill up with water. That's all we need to do. Okay, getting back to Craig. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Now, Craig, question I wanted to ask you. What items have you received from the wrestlers that own them themselves, or the titles from the wrestlers that held that belt? And what have you gotten? Like I know for a fact that you had Greg the Hammer Valentine's robe that you sold back to the WWE on that WWE Treasures, Greatest Treasures on A&E. But what else have you gotten from the actual wrestlers themselves? What pieces of memorabilia have you gotten from the wrestlers themselves?
A few pieces. Most of the pieces that I have were through other collectors.
Through second, third party, right?
Yes, but the Hammer Valentine, the Hammer robe, the black and red one with the hearts on it, and that's the one that was on
A&E.
The Lost Treasures.
Yeah.
So I actually got that from him. I did get a Miss Wrestling 2 robe, Olivia Walker robe, who Olivia Walker was his wife, but I did get one of his robes directly from him as well. Yeah, I got a golden spike from Kevin.
Hey,
Other than that,
I got one for you, Craig. You almost had the Holy Grail at one time, didn't you?
I was close to that. If you're talking about the NWA belt, I was really.
Tell that story.
Well, I received a phone call, and this is for the NWA World Heavyweight belt, and this was the 80s version, the one with race and
Sweet show.
yeah, the 10 pounds of gold belt. And I was out of town with work, and I received a call, and the call was from I guess a collector buddy of mine, and he told me, he says, man, he says, you know, we have this opportunity to get the NWA World belt, the 10 pounds of gold belt. I was like, man, really? That's gonna come about. And he started getting into the story and how it was an attorney had it, and it was from Flair had used it, I guess, as some collateral. So the attorney was holding on to it, and he was looking to recoup his money. So my guy, I guess he received a call from the attorney, and I don't know how that relationship came about, but it was being offered for sale, and he had first crack at it. So when he called me and told me about it, a little bit hard to believe at first, but after speaking to him, it sounded real. So I was like, yes, man, let's do it. So I had to, they wanted cash. So we started at 50,000, and then we went up to 75. So I went ahead and got the cash ready for it. And he actually came pick it up and was on his way to pick up the belt. And he was like probably about 4 hours into the trip when he received a call and said it was, a no-go, that I think another attorney maybe have gotten involved. and it was kind of dead for now. And maybe after that, it was Triple H ended up with it.
Wow.
Yes, I was really, really close to having that.
Well, you have the original Texas title too, right?
I have a Texas title. Yeah, the Texas heavyweight title, which was held back in the early '80s. Feud of Von Erich, Gino Hernandez, Chris Adams, and there was a few others.
And
Can
you
I
have
tell
the,
you something about that, Craig?
What's that?
I held that belt. I was the last Texas heavyweight champion before it went to Funk.
Okay, right. I think so. I think actually I have some pictures of in the magazine if you want, if you having it.
Yeah, I beat Scott Casey in San Antonio, and then the company went bankrupt.
That might be the Southwest Championship belt.
They billed it as the Texas belt. at the
Okay.
time.
Okay. Yeah. I have
the three of us were just with Scott Casey this December.
yes, I saw him at a couple of, I think the last world class event there.
Yep, we were together. The three of us, me, you, and Kevin, were with Scott Casey. Yep.
Yeah. I enjoy speaking. I've been fortunate. Over the years going to a lot of these fan fests and these events, running and meeting the wrestlers, and the road stories are really, really good. And no comparison to what they have out there now. But I've been fortunate to from Greg Valentine meeting from Drew to Kevin, Terry Funk, Doug and Ricky Morton. There's a couple handfuls that I've
Al Perez.
close to. Al Perez, yes, definitely.
All good friends. All good friends. We formed
So,
it, all of us, right? We always see each other at conventions and the cons and the get-togethers and the wrestle cons and the wrestle fests and everything else. We've managed to all always come back, and it's always us on our own little table, right?
yeah. We have a really good group that just enjoy the company, and the stories are really, really good. It's it's really good for me as a fan. Not just a collector and all, but I was a fan before anything. So it's
We all work.
We're all fans. We're all, and
yeah, it took me. I wasn't quite sure what a mark was for a long time, and I was scared to ask anybody because I didn't know if I was one or not.
No.
And we
all were
that sparked me up to it.
well,
We all were marked at one time.
Andrew, I'd like to personally thank Craig for all his support with us.
Yep,
I
absolutely.
mean, Craig has done.
I'm glad.
Matty, I don't know if you've met Craig, but there isn't a more giving guy than Craig.
Oh, we've spoken on the phone, and I already know just how important Craig is to you guys, and vice versa. And like I said, it's nice to see when everybody's kind of a family together, and it's part of what the wrestling business is, right? To remember,
Craig and I met at WrestleMania 30. We met at WrestleMania 30. He brought me into to WrestleCon with him and Greg and everything, and we just became friends since then. And he's become one of my best friends on the planet. And we know when he called me and told me that he was going to be on that A&E TV series, I said, man, that is right up your alley. And he got on that, and he was on the WWE Lost Treasures, and that was just tremendous for him. And I said to myself, you know what? All of us have been there. All of us have been a wrestling fan or a mark in the business. And Kevin calls himself a mark for the Sheik. And Kevin would tell me, I was just such a kid and I was a mark for the original Sheik. He goes, and I sat in the locker room and Sheik was staring at me. And he goes, and I said, Kevin, what did Sheik say to you when you were staring at him in the locker room?
What are you looking at? I was getting something. Craig, I gotta give this to you. It's a Sheik button.
Oh, awesome! He was one that my memories of him through the magazines at the early age in the late 70s. He was one that he made you feel that it was real. I mean, he really played the part.
Well, let me tell you a quick Sheik story. I was a kid and I went to the Boston Garden, and I thought it was Spiros Arias, but it wasn't. It might have been Dominic DeNucci. But it was the first time I saw the Sheik. And I swear to God, when he came out of the building, I came out of the dressing room, the building vibrated. I had never seen anything like that. And the crazy thing was, they must have been college students because they were dressed up and they were carrying a sign, "Go Sheik, go." And Boston Garden was a tough building to work. As they're going down the front row, "Go Sheik, go," the people always killed him. But he was a special guy. And he was so good to me. So good to me that I can't ever tell you what he meant to me. And when I got the chance, when I was booking in Florida, I'd bring him in. And I brought him into Hawaii when I was booking Hawaii. He was such a special entity in this business. Again, as time goes on, we forget about these guys. Matty, did you ever get to see the Sheik?
Yes. Yes. And like I said, you're talking about, there's no one particular golden era, but let's say that's kind of stuff is the golden era wrestling with him and Volkov and all those guys. There was just, we laugh, right? We see some of the physiques on today's wrestlers and everything else. None of that mattered. The
Iron, you're thinking of the Iron Sheik. We're talking about the original Sheik.
Oh, no, I'm just young enough that I did not get to see the original Sheik.
Oh, he actually saved Vince's territory at a time. They got into a little lull, and he came in and wrestled Bruno 2 times in all the buildings. They were sellouts. And I think it's the last time they ever had wrestling in Fenway Park. It was the main event was Kowalski, the 4th time they went into Boston, usually 3 and done. They had a 4th match, and it was a Sicilian stretch match. And the semifinal was the Sheik and Bulldog Brower. And they drew like 30,000 people. It was amazing.
For people like me, Kev, that don't know, what year are we talking about here?
I'm going to say it was 68, 69.
Oh.
So that's what I'm saying, folks out there, for some of the wrestling history, like I said, and we'll see this as all the shows develop. So we're really going to bring in not just guests, but really get a real taste of that different wrestling history along with our other guests that we bring in.
And Craig's a
I don't want to.
historian too. Craig is a wrestling historian. And I got a question to ask him. Craig, have you ever talked to our friend in Boston, Tom Burks? Probably the greatest wrestling historian. And I stumped him one time. And I couldn't believe I stumped Tom Burke.
Because he's really good.
Yeah, because I told him when I was a kid, you know, when we were talking last show, Matty, about that Paul Bowser had a special dispensation to have his own world champion.
Yep.
I saw Pat O'Connor when I was a kid come to Boston and lose to Kowalski. And Tom said to me, that can't be right. But Tom went through all his papers and newspaper clippings and found it. And he said he couldn't believe it. That's how much power Paul Bowser had.
Wow. So, Kevin, one thing I wanted to say, Kevin, you said, so basically what you were saying before was the building shook when the Sheik came out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what you're telling me is that was the original Road Warrior pop.
Yeah. Yeah. For
right?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
That was the original Road Warrior pop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a young kid, when the Sheik just in the magazine, looking at him, flipping through the pages, and when he was in the magazine, he was scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how old was he when he wrestled his last match?
I think he was 72, 73. I was in Japan with him, and my job and Sabu's job was we'd walk him to the ring and make sure no one got close to him. You know what I mean? Because in Japan at the time, I don't know if still, probably everything's changed, but in Japan at the time, if you were afraid of something and you could touch it, you get their energy. And people would just run up and try to touch him. And he'd spin around and the building would empty. He'd go into the crowd and the building would empty. 2 minutes later, he'd be in the ring. And the crazy thing was every chair was set back up. I mean, At 72, he was still drawing money. You know,
That's great.
him and Sabu with against Tarzan Godo and Onita, they drew big houses, and then there was a bird to death.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen video of of them in Japan and Sheik in his later days, and I mean, that was some really wild matches. At
And
his age, I don't know how he was doing it at that age.
and Sheik and Abdullah were the first guys to turn, as the Japanese call foreigners, gai jings. They were the first guys to turn gai jings into baby faces, the Funk brothers. And Abdullah stabbed Terry with a fork in the shoulder, and Terry was rolling around the ring with the fork sticking out of his shoulder. I mean, amazing business that he drew. Amazing.
Wow. Now,
Before we forget, I don't want to cut you off, Andrew, but before I forget, since you have such an amazing collection, are people able to go follow you online where you list some of the pictures of some of the collectibles that you've racked up over the years?
I haven't. I don't listen to the first podcast. I'm kind of a white person, and I don't really advertise too much of anything that I have, not just collection, with personal things, anything. But I have been getting quite a few requests through other collectors as well, some friends that I met as well, and so I am thinking about it. I would probably like to, because I would like for people to see, not just what I have, but what's out there, and bring back memories of back in the day. And
Right.
Yeah, man, that's you have such a big piece of history. It'll kind of be like a museum to show people. And while I'm on that note too, Kevin and Andrew, let everybody out there know on social media how they could find you guys and what platforms you're on.
well, right now I'm on Facebook, Andrew the Reinforcer Anderson, Andrew Anderson, and on Drew the Wrestler on Twitter, Andrew the Reinforcer on Instagram. Also, there's Andrew Anderson Wrestling at gmail.com. You can email me anytime, any questions you have. But the most important part is right now, Kevin has is not actually on Facebook or anything. Kevin is persona non grata on Facebook or anything. He hasn't really updated himself because there were a few people that had fake accounts. But we're working on Kevin getting his media sites up.
I got a Twitter account, but other than that, I didn't get on Facebook. Well, I was on Facebook for a while, but then there was 5 different fake accounts, so it caused a little problem. But I'm going to get back on. So anyway,
In the meantime, got to take a commercial break. We have to pay the bills, as Matty said. So we'll be back in a few minutes, and just check out this from our sponsors.
Elm Logistics, for all your logistic needs. Call 631-299-3595. That's 631-299-3595. Elm Global Logistics. Pride, performance, and partnerships.
In the mood for a freshly roasted cup of coffee? www.offtherailscoffeeroasters.com.
The Monty and the Pharaoh Show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite 4-letter word. California wine, New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
Being a super collector and being a historian, but why don't you let us know how you've come to know these guys and how you pay the bills? What's your day-to-day gig?
Well, my day-to-day job is my business is pretty much oil and gas, and I supply labor and equipment to the oil and gas industry. Mostly in the states, in the U.S., it's mostly a lot of labor, skilled labor, and I work through into Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and off and on in New Jersey and Bayonne. But I have a few companies, and one of the other companies is what Kevin was referring to is, that deals directly more with the drilling industry. In other words, when rigs are drilling for oil or gases, I have a product that goes in and cleans the wellbore and just makes the flow. When they find oil or gas, I have a product that makes it flow, better. So, and that one is actually in Saudi Arabia, and which we've been there for approximately 7 years now, and we're expanding into Malaysia. So that's what Kevin's referring to. I'm trying to get closer and closer to Singapore so I could go meet more people. So I'm pushing to get, in the next probably 3 months, I'll be actively doing business in Malaysia. So I am getting closer to Singapore. So
He's getting there. The business has the plans of moving
He's
into
gonna
Singapore.
I'm getting there. Yeah, it's got to pay. It's got to pay the bill for me to get to Singapore. So I'm getting close. It's actually been about 2 years in the works for Malaysia. So, but it's close. It's close.
Well, that's
I'm
great if
looking
we get to
forward.
Singapore, because of course we get to Singapore, we're going to have a reunion with the original Purple Haze, Mark Lewin. So, right, Kev?
That would be awesome. That would be really awesome.
Yeah.
He was one like the original Sheik to me. I mean, when you saw him on TV.
Well, Mark Lewin had some major feuds, right?
What?
Mark Lewin had some major feuds with the Sheik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes said Mark was the greatest heel he ever worked with and the greatest baby face he ever saw.
I mean, back in Atlanta in the early '80s when he was there, and Kevin, you were feuding with him, and I mean, man, he was real. He'd come out and it's on. He put you in his sleeper, and you were foaming from the mouth. That was, as a young kid, that was real.
Yeah, and the other thing people don't know, that Mark beat Lou Thez for the California World Championship, put him to sleep.
Wow.
Thez ever got put to sleep by anybody else. And when Mark was 19 years old, he was headlining Madison Square Garden with Argentina Rocca.
Yeah, wow. Man,
Unbelievable.
that's a lot. That says a lot. I mean, he was the real deal. In Florida, the whole Florida deal with Dusty, and during those years where, I would like to have been living in Florida for those years to go to some of their matches, because they were, the magazines and the video, I'm sure didn't do no justice.
Yeah. So, Matty, we've been talking about ourselves, me and Andrew. Tell us what you got coming up and get going.
Well, so far keeping our fingers crossed, as we were talking about COVID before. So couple cool things coming up. Next week I'll be actually out on the road going to Miami for the film premiere of I, Mordecai. That's by a good friend of mine, Mr. Marvin Samuel. So it'll be a very cool honor to be a part of that project. And I'll be, it'll be a blessing to be able to work with somebody I've known for a very, very long time and see the fruition of his journey to make this movie come true. It's about his father. Again, anybody who's looking to check into it, hit it up on Instagram, I, Mordecai. And then you'll see I, Mordecai, the movie. And then 10 days after that, I will be on the road out to good old Las Vegas, and it'll be for to do one of the largest cigar events and tobacco events that's out there. So that's called the TPE. So I'll be out there with my boys from Jewish State, promoting some of the newest stuff that's out there on the market. And then, of course, everything else that's going on with bigger events. We're just hoping everything goes well. And then there'll be a bunch more events out on the road, and a bunch more promotions. So I'm not going to go jinx myself and talk about those just yet. But for now, those are the two big ones that are coming up in the next 2-3 weeks. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to figure out what's going on in the world. And like I said, that's important to everybody. Obviously, Craig with all of his traveling, Kevin and Andrew with them being on the road doing shows and gigs. So, crazy world out there. But all of us got to do what we're doing.
It's a mess.
Craig, on February 22nd, right?
What's that?
You're joining us in Texas at World Class Wrestling Revolution. 22nd,
Yes. I've been slowly getting me into the business.
Yes.
I don't think it's gonna go too much farther there. It's a lot harder than it looks.
So Andrew, where's information about that? So if people want to get a little bit more info on that show or grab some tickets, where do they need to go, brother?
World Class Wrestling Revolution, or in the fans of World Class Wrestling Revolution on Facebook and Instagram, World Class Wrestling Revolution, and you'll be able to find the show at the a good friend of ours, Tony at Southern Junction, who runs the venue Southern Junction. It's a great venue, and we've been packing the house there from when it was SWE Fury. Now that it's World Class Wrestling Revolution, it's a great company to work for, and we packed the house last December 11th, and we hope to do it again this January 22nd. I mean, we're looking forward to good times, great talent. You have Moonshine Mantell against Jacob Fatu, who's a great second generation wrestler, and he was a former MLW heavyweight champion, or is the MLW heavyweight champion, I think. And you also have, and he's at the PCW Ultra heavyweight tag team champion with Joseph Samael. So you have Jacob Fatu versus Moonshine Mantell. Charlie Haas will be defending the world heavyweight title. A lot of great talent over there. A great ring announcer in Brittany Houghton, a color commentator rather. The whole everybody on cast. And I want to thank Eric Embry and Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, obviously, I thank him all the time for everything, but Eric Embry for having faith in me, and Jerry Bostic for putting me on the show and making, keeping me relevant. And it's a really great product, and hopefully, it'll keep the ball rolling and keep Texas wrestling alive and strong. I mean, wrestling has always been a hotbed in Texas, and the Dungeon of Doom seems to be hot. Yeah, great. Really good. Right? You've seen it. You've been with us for the past year and a half, Craig. You've seen how we've been rolling in Texas.
The crowds are really good in Texas. Definitely a market there for it.
So, right on. So Andrew, if anybody has any questions, they could reach out to you and Kev.
Absolutely. Reach out to me and Kevin through the Monty and the Pharaoh. They always contact Monty and the Pharaoh too. We're on their network now, so we want to thank Monty and the Pharaoh every show we do, and for all that they do for us. And I'm thanking you, Matty, for helping us out with the formatting on the show and everything. I mean, we ran into some glitches, both the second episode, we run into a little bit of glitches, but we're learning. It's a learning process, and as we learn as we go, and we're ironing out any little, audio and video glitches that come along, and eventually it'll really gel, and that's how you make it work. And we want to thank Craig Masse, my good friend Craig Masse, and I didn't mean to call you the world's biggest mark, but I was busting your balls for that T-shirt.
It's all right.
It's all right. I gave Kevin $5 to punch him in the nuggets for you.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure he'll probably do it for free.
Hey,
true.
Craig.
We were all marks at one time. So
Hey, Craig.
If you have a love of wrestling, you kind of had to be. You have to be.
You have to be. I'm still a mark, so.
Yeah, it took me a while. I was scared to ask anybody what it meant, what it was. So, but again, Andy Fernandez enlightened me on it.
Craig.
Party at the bar.
Craig, I just want to again thank you for what you've done for me and Andrew and what you've done for wrestling. And I think it's great that you have all these collectibles. Maybe later on we can go and really show some people what you have.
Yeah, I think you know what I think one of the next steps is going to be. I think we're going to have to do a live in the dungeon with Kevin Sullivan and Andrew Anderson in Craig's museum there in his house, and show off some of the artifacts that he has, because I mean it is amazing pieces of history, of wrestling history and memorabilia. Right, Kev? What do you agree? You agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Road trip to Louisiana.
Yeah. You heard it here, folks.
It's always a good time here.
So, and of course, I mean, I know Craig and his friend Dale have been plotting something coming up that we're going to be hitting Vegas very soon. I think we've been talking about how we need to get away, right?
Very soon, long overdue.
Yeah.
I might be with Matty in a couple of weeks.
Yes. All right, so Craig, but if it's all of us together, I don't know if there's enough bail money, man. You don't want to go selling your collection.
You're right. Might have to call it.
Tomorrow, mail us a cake with a file in it.
Literally, or we'll get we'll get that cake. We'll start gnawing at the steel. On that note, much love. Thank you to everybody out there. Much love, peeps. Thank you to
All right,
my
fellas.
brothers, Monty and the Pharaoh, Kevin, Andrew, Craig. It's been an honor. Much love. And we will see you on the next
Yep.
episode.
Thank you.
You on the next episode of In the Dungeon with Kevin Sullivan and the reinforcer Andrew Anderson. Thank you, Craig. Thank you so much, guys.
Fellas.
Peace out and much
Good
love,
talk.
y'all.
Same here.